I just have a announcement or two until we see what our content is today. So those who don't know me, I am Aaron Whittenberger from the Bluegrass IIBA chapter. Hi, Christy. Glad to have you all here. I think we'll get more people join us here in the next minute or two. The one thing I wanted to show you before I turn this over to Van, and I had just mentioned, somebody asked and I just mentioned that we did have a hiccup last week. The event didn't happen. I was out to have a medical procedure done, and I left a couple people in charge to host that meeting and share the content, do that. And the one who was supposed to start the meeting didn't realize he was supposed to start the meeting and host it. So didn't happen. So what we were supposed to do last week, we are going to do today and and then we added a session on September 15th will now be our last session instead of September 8th and that so mark your calendar accordingly that this will go to September 15th. We are going to skip September 1st, of course, is Labor Day. We're going to skip the holiday here in North America or the US. North America because it's Labor Day in Canada too. Um, so that is what's going to happen with these. Before we get to the content, I did want to show you how you could get to previous recordings and everything. Here is our YouTube channel. So if you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, which is, IIBA Bluegrass, right there is that. So we've had two sessions that have actually happened in this. So they're both right here and that. We also have a playlist. Your interface may be different than mine, but we do have an amplifying your BA impact with GenAI as a playlist. So as we publish more of these, there will be a final 6 videos in this series when we get there. Also on our website, if you are an IIBA member and you are subscribed to our website. So if you're not subscribed to our website, you can go away. You subscribe to our newsletter right there is subscribing to the website. And then in the members only section, um, you'll have access to this now. It is in our chapter webinars 2022 to 2025. And right there's our first 2 sessions. Today's session will be added to this. When we are over, you get all the other webinars we've done in the last 3 years as well. So that is how you can get to previous um, sessions and the future, next 4 videos that we will publish. One nice thing about subscribing to our YouTube channel is as soon as we publish it on YouTube, you will get a notice that, there's a new video that Bluegrass IIPA has published. So that, I want to introduce Van Miller, who's a buddy of mine, known him for years, used to work with him now again. Um, and that so he is from the Cincinnati area, very much a senior business analyst. And he is going to share our content and facilitate our learning discussion from it. So you could take it away, man.
All right. Thanks for that introduction, Aaron. I appreciate that. Yeah, today what we're going to do is we have a video from the IIBA that talks about Chat GPT and business analysis and kind of has a discussion about how business analysis is being affected by Chat GPT. They talk a little bit about use cases, etc. So what I'll do is I'll play the video. We'll take a look at it, and then as we're watching it, think about things we might want to discuss when it's finished. It takes about 40 minutes to run the video, and then we'll have a discussion afterwards. So without further ado, I'll get it started. Let me share the sound. Okay. You should be seeing my screen.
Yep, I see it.
And let me hit play. And then you should also
Welcome to Business Analysis Live.
I
My
hear
name
it.
is Susan Moore. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at IIBA.
And my name is Scott Bennett. I'm the Manager of Business Analysis here at the International Institute of Business Analysis. Thank you for joining us today. We've got an exciting topic queued up. We're going to be talking about Chat GPT and business analysis.
It seems like it's kind of a thing these days. I've noticed it's kind of everywhere. So I'm happy that we're talking about this because I think this has a lot of implications for business analysis professionals. But wait, there's more of our broadcast today, right, Scott?
Yes, we've been doing some research on our own, Susan and I, and really understanding the power of this tool. But we have a guest that's joining us today. His name is Amal. Amal, welcome. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
Thank you for having me on the show. My name is Imal Barieli. I've been a business analyst since about 2005, and I've been a business analysis consultant since 2012. You can click on my LinkedIn profile to see the projects I've worked on, and I'll keep it short.
That's great. So for those of you who have joined us live, please put your comments in the chat today. We will get to your questions as we go through. We anticipate a lot of questions today. And if you're listening to this as a recording, either on YouTube or on our podcast, we'd appreciate if you can give us a rating on our podcast. And if you do have suggested episodes that we can cover, Amal approached us through this. You can email us at live@iiba.org. Okay, so let's jump into this topic here. So just a little bit of context setting for those of you who haven't done any research yet on ChatGPT. It is part of AI, artificial intelligence, and it's a large language model, an LLM. We're not going to dive into the technology here. We really want to talk about the impacts of these tools. And GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, GPT. So we've been playing around with this tool, and Amal, you've been looking into this a fair bit. Tell us about some of your experiences and what you've seen and what you've shared on your YouTube channel.
Well, we have been, inside our community, we've been looking at ChatGPT since it was released to find ways of getting it to help us with our productivity as business analysts. And so we've run across a number of different tests. We've run a number of tests, and we've found a couple of use cases where it works well, a few use cases where maybe it's not as helpful. But overall, I think the overall summary, I think, of our findings so far is that I think it's a great tool to help us essentially boost our productivity, if I want to summarize it.
Okay. So we thought what we do is provide a very simple example for anyone who hasn't seen ChatGPT before. I'm going to share the video here, and it's pre-recorded because sometimes ChatGPT doesn't load for me. So I've got it pre-recorded here, and I'll walk you through the example here. So here we've got, this is the ChatGPT interface. And at IIBA, we've been looking at our menu system on our website. And on our website, we've been looking at what are those various menu items that we should be putting on there. So I've got a question here I'm asking ChatGPT to build a website, what menu items should be included? So you can see here it's starting to build a response. The list here says home, about us, product/services, contact us, blog/news, FAQs, reviews. We've also got portfolio, privacy policy, terms and conditions, and each one of these has a description with it. It does say at the bottom, keep in mind that you might need this customized for your website. So let me further refine that by saying, well, what should be included in a menu for a membership website? So ChatGPT remembers the context of the conversation, and it's adding more information here. Home, about us, membership plans, member dashboard, member benefits, events, community forums, resources, support, log out. So I'll ask one more question here about policies. What policies should be included in a website? So we'll see what it comes up with. It's thinking.
That is one of the things that I noticed. Sometimes you'll put in the prompt and it will think for a minute. So
Yeah. So the list here it's coming up with is a privacy policy, terms and conditions, cookies policy, a disclaimer, refund policy, which is really important for e-commerce, shipping and delivery policy, copyright policy. So this was just a quick, very simple demo to give those of you who haven't seen this tool in action before insight into what this looks like. So in terms of the tool and as we've been using it, we've been experimenting a little bit, and I'll share one experiment I did 2 weeks ago. So 2 weeks ago, we had our broadcast, and I took the transcript of that, 4,000 words of it, dropped it into ChatGPT and asked it to summarize the episode, getting ready to publish the YouTube video. And surprisingly, it did a really great job at summarizing that text. So that's one use case of how this tool can be helpful. Amal, you've been playing around with it a little bit and trying different things. And what have you learned coming directly out of the tool?
I would say, I mean, just building off of the example that you just demoed there, one of the biggest areas I think that it's able to help us is in its ability to really do some creative work around the knowledge gathering that we need to do as analysts. So for me, very specifically as a consultant, oftentimes what I need to do when I'm going from client site to client site is that I need to learn very specifically about a specific domain that my client is having me deal with as part of the project. And that's really one of the areas where I'm really able to go to ChatGPT and start asking very specific questions about, explain to me what a salesperson does as part of their regular job in a large enterprise environment that is selling this kind of a product. And asking it those types of questions gives me a lot of insight into the activities that a salesperson performs. And that knowledge helps me to understand really my customer's world or my other stakeholders' world so that I can show up at the table with some more intelligent questions instead of really starting to kind of ask them details about, hey, what do you do on, in this part versus that part? It really kind of helps me with that initial discovery work so that I show up at the table sounding way smarter than I really am, but most folks not knowing that I've done a lot of it through ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's the power of a tool like this. It's got access to so much information. It's able to summarize and sort of bring us up to speed on some, I guess, generalization of things.
Yeah.
But I guess the challenges that we've seen and heard is that if you get down to some more of that detail, you could end up uncovering some things that are potentially misleading, wrong. There might be mistakes in there. It's not 100% accurate.
Yeah, and I would say even more so, I would say that, I mean, just based on a comment that we got on our YouTube channel, one of our YouTube followers actually saw a mistake that I made in one of our live demos where ChatGPT, I asked it a question, it gave me some information that was wrong, and I felt like based on my over-reliance, I just accepted what it had to say, and that mistake that it made actually slipped past me as well. And so I've been doing this again since 2005, and if it has that kind of an impact on me, I think that for folks that are just kind of starting out their careers, there may be a tendency for those types of folks to really kind of over-rely on a tool like this.
Right.
But I mean, that example, I think, is a really clear example of how that can really introduce a lot of risks into whatever it is that you're doing. So yeah, it certainly has its pitfalls. And again, I've learned it the hard way. We have a public video. It's a bit embarrassing for a professional of close to 20 years to make a mistake like that. But look, reality is what it is, right? And so if it can happen to me, I would say that I think it's a real issue that we need to look out for.
I think that's great that you left that in there, by the way, because I do think it shows, hey, if it can slip past somebody that's been doing this work for a while, then if you are new to the profession and you are thinking that, wow, this is the way for me to really get things done, Just be aware, you cannot take off your critical thinking skills. Actually, I want to share a comment that came through the thread. This is from Deborah. And this, I think, is another flavor of that risk that you're mentioning, which is some of that information can be generic, it can be incomplete. It only knows up to 2021, so there are things that have happened since that it doesn't know, and it could be used as the truth. And so I think those critical thinking skills that business analysis professionals bring, you need to apply that to the outputs of ChatGPT as well.
Absolutely. And I would say that it's I think ChatGPT has this habit of speaking with total confidence, which can make the situation much worse, because for new users, a new user would go in and ask it a question, and I think the tone that ChatGPT writes with implies that it is so confident in what it's saying, which can make the situation much worse for new users who are just kind of getting acquainted with it, because you're much more likely to kind of accept it as truth without critical thinking. So that's a great comment from Deborah.
Another thing that we've noticed that is good for is titling things. So for example, we produce YouTube videos, you do as well, Amal. You can sort of give it a general description of what a video is about and say, give me some topics, and it'll generate 10 suggestions, and maybe 8 or 6 of those will be good. So as a YouTuber, this is a tool I'm starting to use. I'm starting to use them to name our videos and can use them for different sessions. So it's interesting to see that as well. Now, there have been some news releases in the last couple of weeks from Microsoft, from Google, and there's some important evolutions coming forward in the productivity software world. So let's chat about that for a little bit, just so people can understand where this might be going. So the tool that you've just seen is OpenAI's ChatGPT. Now, Microsoft and Google are using large language models and embedding them into their products. So what does that mean? Well, you can have your email drafted for you. You can have a PowerPoint assembled for you based on meeting transcripts. All the data the tool has access to, for example, Teams, can pull all this data and put together a PowerPoint presentation for you. It's really interesting. I encourage you to check out a YouTube video on a topic like this, because it can really be an eye-opener. Another example is a spreadsheet. You can have a spreadsheet of data, and the tool can generate what are the top most meaningful things for that. So it's got the capability to start doing these mundane tasks that don't really take a lot of our intelligence, but they take a lot of our time to go through and do.
Yeah, our time and our willpower, I would say, our mental stamina can get completely worn out by doing a lot of repetitive tasks that is really part of our jobs. And I think if I was to really kind of think about the big picture view of the impact that tools like this might have, I think it is a great opportunity for us to offload a lot of that, I think, mentally intense, but maybe a little bit lower value work onto a tool like this, so that we can kind of free up our thinking and our mental stamina to do real problem solving and do some real deep thinking that that our clients and our employers might be relying on us for.
Yeah.
We were talking before we went live today. We were talking about a book called Deep Work. It's by Cal Newport. He writes a lot on productivity. And so there's this concept he has of deep work versus shallow work. Shallow work are things that are what we might call busy work, answering emails and doing things like that. And I think there was a study out there that said that could take up to 6 hours per day. 6 hours per day. That's a lot over the course of 5 days a week. So, how can ChatGPT or tools like it, tools embedded in other productivity tools that we use, how could that help us to become more productive, right? So to offload some of that shallow work, because deep work is where creativity happens and real analytical thinking happens. And for those of you out there that are thinking, how would a business analyst use this? What does this do to the business analyst job? Then I think what it does is it enables us to manage some of these shallow work through something like a ChatGPT or an AI tool, and then really enables us to do the deep analytical work, which ChatGPT is, or any other AI tools, are just not primed to do. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
so think about that.
Yeah, so let's
And
talk about that, Susan. I like where you're going with that thought. Let's talk about what this technology can't do in the business analysis space. Thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it can't come up with brand new knowledge. It's really reciting back to you what it knows.
mhm.
And while you can include some of that information with your prompt, and I know we've got some comments about how do you write these prompts? You can provide it with that information and help you to do things like summarize it. But that's one of the risks. I think another risk is potentially you could be unintentionally plagiarizing because
Mhm.
of the way that it puts these words together. It could be pulling from other sources. And I know we were talking again before our live broadcast today that potentially content generated through this model is not your own. It is not copyrightable, as it were,
Yeah.
because it's being pulled together through this source. In addition, I think it's potentially inaccurate. It's potentially incomplete. I think those are some of the risks.
Yeah.
And business analysis professionals, again, we've got the ability to mitigate those risks through our work.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think that's where our opportunity lies, right? As analysts, I mean, it's right in the title of our profession, right? Business analyst. And I think that word analyst is going to become much more important because as you start to kind of rely more and more heavily on AI tools, I think there's going to be a greater demand from our employers, from our clients on their analysts to make sure that whatever AI is saying is um, firm, for lack of a better word. It's true, it's well thought through, it's answered the questions well, and whatever responses that we get, we have to, I think, through some analytical work, be able to explain the rationale for why this makes sense, because a lot of AI tools right now are really incapable of explaining why it's giving really the guidance or why it's doing the speculation that it is. And I've pushed ChatGPT a couple of times, and it kind of reverts back when I ask it more deeply about, hey, why is it that you are suggesting these three things? And it'll start to rely back on really kind of default surface level answers without
Mm.
actually going through the rationale. So I think that's an opportunity for analysts really to do that type of actual analysis work. So I would encourage folks to start adopting these tools as much as possible. But if we were to look at a process of how we want to start leveraging these tools, I would say that the two areas for folks to start focusing on would be to make sure that you're very clear about the ask that you're making of the tool, because that the way that you establish your line of questioning for AI tools really affects the outcome that it gives you. And once it provides its input, look at it very critically and vet it very, very well. And I think that if you start to build up those two skill sets and push a lot of the I'm going to call it grunt work for lack of a better word, but push all the grunt work, let it do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, and just do the deep analysis work on the front end and the back end. I think that that's a really good strategy and a mindset to be in when approaching these tools.
Yeah. I came across a study by Cornell University. They're still in the process of it. I'll have Brenda drop a link in the chat. And they're starting to look, an early look at the impact of GPT on the labor market. In terms of roles that will be impacted, won't be impacted. Writers was one of the ones that seemed to surface at the top of this. But along the lines of what this tool can't do for business analysis professionals, they can't talk to people, they can't read body language, they can't understand corporate culture. There's a number of things that these tools can't do for us. So it's, in my view, a productivity gain for us. A tool that we can certainly leverage and we should embrace, but not something that can do everything that a business analysis professional can do.
Yeah, and I have looked a little bit into what Microsoft is looking to do with that. So if folks are interested, we could get into a little bit more deeper into that conversation. They're being a little bit tight-lipped about the details, but they've given us enough to give us some room for speculation on what it might actually look like moving forward.
Hopefully it's not as annoying as Clippy.
No, I think
Do you
it's the
remember
I think
Clippy?
it's
He was not helpful at all. I
that
was
little paper
said,
clip that would pop up on the
yes,
Microsoft Word every
yeah,
time you try. It looks like you're writing an email. Yes. Go away. I
yes,
was
go
trying to shut it
away.
off
I
all the
don't
time.
need your
Yeah, I
help.
remember.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully it's more
Yeah.
helpful than Clippy.
So, Susan, why don't we dig into some questions? But I just want to share with the audience that this recording will be available on the IIBA YouTube channel today. So if you want to share it with your friends and colleagues, you can certainly do that.
Yeah, actually, that is one of the questions that we've been getting. So thank you for that. Let's see. You know what? Because I have been trying to keep up with the questions, I'm just going to pop some of these in here, and we will see. All right. So first one here. This is from Mohammed. What is a business analyst? What does ChatGPT have to do with the daily task of an analyst? How do you guys want to answer that question?
I would say if I was, look, my elevator pitch for what is a business analyst essentially is that I essentially help my clients help them structure their business well, and then I help them design solutions to make sure that that business structure can operate well. I would say that that's a very brief summary of what a business analyst does. With IIBA's BA-BOK, I think lays out a very good framework for how to understand the tools, the techniques of how a business analyst does these things and what kind of tools are available to us. And so, I mean, that can be a whole workshop on its own if we need to, but at a very high level, what we're essentially doing is we're helping our employers and our clients figure out how they can implement some sort of a change that they're looking to implement so that they can operate well.
And so the Chat GPT part of that is, I think a lot like any other job, whether you're in HR or finance or technology, a lot of our jobs just include these busy tasks, for lack of a better word, answering emails, putting together slide decks, researching particular topics. So I think the opportunity that we have with Chat GPT, assuming we know how to form those really good prompts. And by the way, I think that's potentially a new skill set that business analysis professionals should lean
Good point.
into,
Mm-hmm.
is that you can use AI assistance to complete some of those tasks. Now, again, as we've said here, I don't think that this is going to go out and it's not going to write your requirement document. It's not going to interview your stakeholders. But essentially, that's the opportunity that we see with Chat GPT and tools like it today. And I know, Emma, you mentioned these tools are evolving at a breakneck speed. It is fast. I mean, 3 was out just a couple of weeks ago. 4 just came out. So who knows? 5 will probably be here. So I think that's maybe how I might answer that. Do you want to add anything to that one, Scott?
Yeah, I think the way I use the tool right now is more of a research tool. I had an example 2 weeks ago where our director asked me to look into something from a business perspective, a piece of software. And a technical colleague of mine was looking into the technical aspect. He had spent an hour and a half going through and trying to figure it out. I went to ChatGPT, typed in probably about 5 sentences, and got my answer within 2 minutes. And I jokingly messaged him back, got him on the phone, and said, I just did all my work in 2 minutes. So it was a great way for me to very quickly understand I had no knowledge about and might have taken me an hour of surfing through the web to figure out, getting an idea of what this was all about.
And we can get into some very specific use cases. I mean, I think we're probably at a bit of a high level for that conversation now, but in our community, I mean, I gave it our data model and I asked it to write an SQL query for me for a lot of the technical business analysts out there, and it came so close, so much closer. It essentially saved me a good 30 minutes of writing SQL on the technical front. So it has a lot of those types of capabilities, but
nice.
There are a ton of use cases for us to explore further.
Yeah, and we've been talking about it doing that shallow work. I know I had a question here. Let me see if I can find that about this term shallow work. Shallow work, by the way, comes from now Cal Newport's book called Deep Work. So that's not something I made up. So if you want to learn more about what he defines as shallow work, Deep Work is the name of his book. But it can do. I've been experimenting with it So for example, I've got my own blog, and I was asking it to create for me a month-long social media calendar with key messages and social media posts and all that stuff. It was kind of an intricate prompt, and
Mm-hmm.
it gave me a really good calendar of things that I
Wow.
could do and things I could work on. Yeah. And it was perfect for that. So I know we've talked a little bit about this, but I think it is a highly creative model. Amal and I have been going back and forth. I had a poem that I asked it to write about business analysis on in a mode of Dr. Seuss, and it was really good. Amal went the rap way, which is fantastic. Why didn't I think of that? We got a nice rap song out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pretty creative. It can do a lot of stuff. Well, let's see.
Hey,
Well, let's
hey,
get over here.
Susan, I think as we wrap up today, maybe you should give us a stanza from that when we're ready for it.
I will.
Okay.
We'll wrap that up. I've got something in mind. So let's see. So we've got this kind of a note here from Ruth. Great for building requirement templates, but you may need to feed it the information. Have you tried that use case, Simal?
Actually, yeah, and we have a video specifically exactly doing that. So essentially, we did I think it was a good 40-minute to 1-hour session where I said, let's just start with a blank Word document, Chat GPT, and let's build ourselves a really good, high-quality requirements template that we can use in our day-to-day work. And again, the result after about 30 to 40 minutes, I think was, I'm going to say, very good is where I would put that. So it's a great comment from Ruth.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. Good job on that CCBA, by the way. Always like to see that. All right, and let's see. Here you go. Here's a note from Sandra. I see it as guidelines or ways to shorten the learning curve. Ultimately, it'll be up to the BA to confirm the accuracy. 100%. Critical thinking skills, analytical thinking skills. You've still got to bring that. I almost think of this as, if I were to look in the Babok guide, I would think of this along the lines of the documentation review technique. I think that's what it's called. That's really what you're getting. You are just producing another set of documentation that you need to evaluate. So you cannot take this as as truth. You really do have to do the next step.
Yeah. And just to add to that very quickly, I would say that there is a task that we typically have to do, which is document production, but there's also a document review task that analysts have to do. I would say that based on what I've seen from Microsoft, that document review task may become much easier. Just like when Scott asked it to summarize the 4,000 word transcript, there's a potential here where the Microsoft's Copilot might start to train itself. Copilot is Microsoft's incorporation of the tool into their Office set. They're going to be able to train that model on a company's specific data set, meaning all of their documents, potentially all of their images, any emails that they have. And what that does is, as analysts, it gives us the ability to go in and say, hey, can you explain to me, based on this company's data set itself, up to date, can you explain to me how this process works inside of this company? And it'll really kind of give you a good starting point with that. So if anybody from Microsoft is listening, look, I got a number of different use cases that I have on my wish list. If you're interested, let me know.
Right.
And we can help you push it into the enterprise environment with some actual use cases for business analysts. So.
Hey, by the way, I wanted to just note, Sandra is look at all those certifications. Wow. So good job on that one as well. Okay, so all right. So Evelyn, I used an AI tool to help me during a workshop engagement and found it useful. Oh, that's interesting. Have you done something like that as well, Emma?
I have it open. I'm using it for everything. So the minute you mentioned that book, Deep Work, I started to go to ChatGPT. So yes, absolutely. Anytime I have a chance, I might be ChatGPTing some answers to these questions that folks are asking.
Yeah, you know what? I feel like Google, remember when Google became a word? I think ChatGPT will become a verb as well. So
I think so too.
guess
Yeah.
maybe that's the way it'll change us. this year. Let's see. Here's a note from Mark. OpenAI is great, but the true power will be realized with the likes of Bing integration and the utilization of Office 365. Yeah. I know that the first test maybe didn't go so well, but I do think they're going to quickly course correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I'll do is when we publish this YouTube video, I'll put a link in the description to some of those demos where you can actually see what these tools look like from a productivity perspective. I think the one I watched was maybe about 3 minutes, and it was, to me, mind-blowing, the potential of this.
Yeah. I would say one very specific use case that I'm looking forward to is my ability to open up Microsoft Visio and say, based on my current client's documents and data set, can you please just draft me a current state process for a specific process? And it just lays it out for me in about 10 seconds. And now I've saved myself and my clients essentially about 2 weeks worth of work of having to figure that out on our own. So I got my fingers crossed for a feature like that.
That sounds compelling. I'm a little skeptical, though, because when I put process diagrams together, it typically takes about 4 or 5 different departments to come together to lay those out. A lot of human interaction there. But hey, if we've got the information and the systems that can pull that out, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I thought this was an interesting question. I really need to know how it works for requirement validation. So you mentioned requirement reviews. It could help with that. How does that work? How about that?
I would say with validation, every time I have to do validation, that's where we really kind of shine, right? Because all of the work that we do up until the point of validation is us essentially eliciting the requirements, doing the analysis, documentation, more analysis. Validation is something that I don't think AI is going to be able to replace, because that's where you actually need folks at the table to come with their true opinions, and it requires a lot of human interaction a lot of times, but it also requires a lot of critical thinking that AI may not necessarily be able to factor in. I find that with a lot of the client work that I do, that there is so much communication that happens that is implicit. Validation tends to be one of those areas where I'll put a requirement up on the screen and I say, folks, this is something that I'm going to be asking you to sign off on at the end of this session. And some people won't speak up, but the expression on their face tells me everything I need to know about how they feel about signing off on that document. And so I think that's something that they're not going to be, that we're going to need to focus on developing those types of skills a lot more.
Let's see. All right. Next question. There again, these questions and comments are coming in quickly. Here's an interesting question. Let's see. There we go. Is there an AI tool where we can get wireframes? That would be a pretty cool tool. I don't know. I know that they are starting to build integrations into tools. I think I saw today there's an integration with Canva. There's one with Zapier. So if you're a Zapier user, there's some stuff that you can do.
No,
What other kinds of integrations into wireframing tools?
I haven't seen any specific tools, but I have a bit of a workaround in mind that I'm willing to test out if folks are interested. Because what I think we can do is we can get ChatGPT to put out some XML code that we can import into another tool, and that would create the actual diagram for us. So I haven't tested it yet, but I do have it on our backlog of tests that we're doing, because Microsoft Visio allows you to open up a standard XML file that describes a process map. So even though that integration may not happen, we may need to do some manual work, some manual workarounds to get that kind of output. So it's on our backlog of things to test when we get to it.
I have seen an experiment that someone did, and they were asking a GPT model to generate a website for them to do a certain thing. And it actually generated the code that put together not just a mock-up, but a functioning website with a button that actually did something. It was really interesting to see. So it's almost skipping the intermediary wireframe and just saying, hey, just build it for me. Now, it wasn't a beautiful website, but it was a functional website.
Well done.
Now, there's another line of conversation happening right
Mhm.
now in our chat, and it's around privacy issues. And I know we haven't talked about that yet. So is there, because I assume that whenever you provide information into ChatGPT and ask it to evaluate something, that it's learning from that. It's including that in its knowledge set. Do you guys know anything about what's privacy concerns there might be around that?
Yeah, I think OpenAI themselves mention right on the screen when you log in to not share any personal information because that information is being incorporated back into their data set. And so I think that warning is up front and center, and it's definitely an issue that they have to be considerate of. And I think for a lot of companies that have data privacy policies, that's one of the things that have kind of given them some hesitation. I know that there are some companies that have told their software developers, for example, do not give this tool the code that we're using to build our proprietary software, because that information is now, we're not going to be able to really patent it or protect it from an
Oh,
intellectual
interesting.
property point of view. So
Wow.
there are a lot of those types of issues that I think are still floating around, and when we don't have any kind of resolution to them yet.
True. We haven't, I mean, we sort of talked about the copyright issues. We haven't talked a lot about the legal issues, and I'm sure at some point, watch, keep a look at your calendar. There will start to be lawsuits around content generated through these AI models. So I think it is best if you are an organization that wants to use this as a regular part of your work to
Mhm.
have some policies around that. And if you're a business analyst, my 2 cents, if you're a consulting business analyst and you are working in different organizations, you need to fully disclose if you are using this, because you could be sharing information that they do not want shared.
Mhm.
So I do think that's a real risk, is just understanding that it becomes part of the public domain.
That's right.
Yeah.
So there are a number of different topics that we could go on to. There's so much we could talk about here. I want to put out to our audience, if there is something you'd like us to dig deeper on, you can send us an email at live@iiba.org. We're happy to take topic suggestions.
Yeah. Do we want to take maybe one more question here?
Sounds good.
Mhm.
Let's see. Let's see if what we can find here. Um, there was one question here, and I don't know if I can find it, but it was asking about how business analysis professionals can build that skill of writing prompts.
There is an area that I actually teach. There's a subject that I teach called the line of questioning,
Mm,
LOQ. And what that
okay.
essentially does is it helps our students learn how to establish a line of questioning, much like a lawyer would before they go into the courtroom. And so anytime, I mean, I take a lot of my inspiration from the legal profession because they're usually very clear, rational thinkers. And so I think that if you build the ability to establish a line of questioning that is going to get you down to the level of depth that's going to address the issue that you're trying to get a resolution to, I think that's probably the skill set to learn is establishing a good, clear line of questioning and not letting the AI tool kind of take you down a path that that it might take you just on its own. And so
Okay.
oftentimes I find myself asking ChatGPT, hey, can you give me this? And it tries to give me a bunch of other things. I say, no, I want to know about this. I need you to follow my line of questioning here so that I can get to where I need to get to. So I think that's a great skill to start working
Mm,
on.
okay, heavy duty interviewing skills. So I know we talk about that sometimes. So, all right, so that's one thing we need to beef up on then, is business
Mhm.
analysis professionals. All righty. Well, Amal, thank you so much. We've had a
Yeah,
lot of
thank you.
questions today, and this has really been such a great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll stop sharing there and bring everybody back into the meeting. So, a lot of good insight there. Does anybody have any topics or thoughts about that? Anything that we want to discuss?
My experience with Chat GPT and all this AI software is that, and they touched on it in the whole thing, is that I can't entirely trust the accuracy of it. It almost feels like I've handed some tasks to an intern and I got to double check their work afterwards just to make sure that they didn't mislead me.
So you think of ChatGPT as an intern, huh?
It feels like it. Yeah. Like I have to look at the work and be like, I can't just take what you told me and say it's 100%. I need to confirm because you seem to get it wrong enough that you're still learning.
Yeah, and that's
And
one thing they said in it is that ChatGPT will not validate requirements or information for you, right?
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I guess it's only been alive since 2021, so I guess you can't really hand your work to a child, right?
that's a good point. And another thing too to keep in mind, some different GPTs act different. A lot of them will cite their sources, so you can go back and check that source and make sure it's good. Like, not everything in there gets cited, but a lot of things do. So if you're asking some kind of research question, oftentimes you'll get a list of sources. It might have 3, 4 different sources that it used to get that information. You can go back and look at those sources and make sure that they're good and they're what you would want. So it can help you. It's not 100%, but you can at least go back and say, hey, what are you basing this on? For some things, it doesn't give you everything, but it gives you a lot. So I don't know if anybody's noticed that.
Certainly. Certainly, you can always ask it to cite its sources, if it
Yeah.
doesn't give it to you and everything. So I
I
like,
use
go
I was going
ahead.
to interject. I last week was working on getting a prompt that I could use to recap meetings because I do as a project manager I'm in status meetings and stuff constantly, and so I'm finding myself getting further and further behind, trying to keep up with just meeting recaps and making sure people have their action items and stuff. So I was trying to come up with something that I could use as a repeatable process. I finally, by the end of the week, had something that I was very happy with, but it does miss a few things. And one call out that I haven't figured out how to get it in there is there were some specific um, references to machine names. Where we have POS labs set up and we give them like a location number, and it did not put those location numbers in my recap, and we had a call out that we wanted to avoid certain lanes for updating. So I've got to go back and it's just things, and that's why I put in the chat learn together because you're trying to tell it to do something that you normally would do yourself. Okay, and you would go and you would do all of that legwork, and it would take you longer to do some of those things. But having the AI tool, we could start thinking out loud, what are those processes that we do on a regular basis and refine those prompts until we get something pretty accurate. But you still have to go back and look at it. And ours is set up where we get the references automatically. So that may be something you could do in your settings so you don't have to worry about going and telling it to give you references. You should be able to tell it somewhere to do it all the time.
You can usually give it if you have access to put instructions into your overall chats, and you can tell it this is the way I want you to deal with all of this information,
Mm-hmm.
and it will try to deal with it.
Yeah.
There were two apropos of the building prompts. One of the things that I do an awful lot is ask the tools to help me to build prompts for them. So I will go through and as I'm doing work, will change things and argue with the AI tool about various things. And then I will say, okay, how would you prompt you in order to do this better? And it frequently will come up with some pretty good ideas on that. The other thing that I was going to say is that I heard quite some time ago, actually, it was a presentation that Angela Wick did. And Angela is, she seems to be really hot on artificial intelligence, which makes sense. But she said that the challenge for us as BAs is going to be to facilitate meetings and facilitate working sessions so that the AI tools can extract the information that we need from them. She was very clear about that, that it's really about facilitation if you want the AI tools to do their job.
I was wondering about.
Go
Sorry, go
ahead.
ahead. No,
I was
go
just
ahead.
saying
Respond.
that's something that they mentioned too in this the video that we just saw. They were talking about facilitation. They were saying it can't the AI can't know your corporate culture. It can't know body language. Basically, it can't facilitate. I think that kind of corresponds with what you're saying about Angela Wick and how she's saying, hey, it's AI is not going to be your facilitator. You still got to do that. You just got to set it up to be able. Your facilitation might enable the AI to make your facilitation quicker. So makes sense, I think. Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to follow up on Tom. You were saying how you're asking the AI to help you with writing a prompt. And I guess I've been hearing sort of competing perspectives on this concept of prompt engineering. On the one hand, I hear a lot of folks saying, hey, it's really critical to how you ask the question. I find myself, when I prompt, I will start with, hey, do you know about heat pumps for home heating and cooling? And then, hey, do you know about this particular model? Do you know about this model? Do you know about this model? Can you compare the three models for me? I just bought a heat pump recently, so that's my example where I needed to be able to compare three different heat pumps. But before I got there, I kind of got it thinking down the right path. And that was my perception about prompt engineer, is that you want to help it narrow in on the scope, and that will help avoid hallucination or pulling in random information. That was my perception, but I've also heard sort of the opposite of just starting asking a question and continue to refine the question. So today, my question to you all is, what's your experience with prompt engineering? Is it critical, or do you just have it more of a conversation? I think I've heard both approaches.
I'm a conversationalist. I just start, and that's the way I counsel when I'm teaching. It's what I tell my students. Get your hands on a tool and ask it questions. Be a BA with it, basically. Treat it like a stakeholder, and that you're a business analyst working with a stakeholder. And, that's...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I do conversation as well. And one of the things I put in the chat is when I ask a question and it gives me something that's just not exactly what I was wanting, like I tell it that, I'll say, first part of what you gave me was great, but the last part didn't really help me. Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you find this? And then I just keep asking over and over again. That's great. Can I have more? That's great. Can I have more? Because a lot of times as you ask it to give you more, it's going to give you a little bit of a different either flavor of it, or it's going to give you go in a different direction. And then, like Van said, I always ask it to provide me a link to the source. Makes it very easier, I should say, to validate the information.
So Yvonne's being a very good BA there in the chat. She says, it depends what I am doing.
Mm-hmm. And I think either one can work too. Like you can engineer a really good prompt that you could have got the same result with a conversation. You just had like he said, that line of questioning. If you had a good line of questioning with your conversation, or if you sat down and spent half an hour coming up with a really good prompt, you could still end up with the same result. So either one can work. It might be somewhat a matter of how you think and how you best interact. Some people might do better at thinking ahead of, I can think of a really good prompt. Here's my background. I'm a homeowner in the United States of America. I'm in Kentucky and I'm buying a heat pump and my home is so big. You could put that all in your prompt and then you could probably get some of the same answers that you did through your conversation. So I think either one can work. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer.
And I
I
think
think
Laura Brandenburg told us that a couple weeks ago during this series, and that is two ways to use ChatGPT. You know, really develop a great prompt, and basically you have one prompt and get all the information you want back versus that conversation where you just continually expand, like Christy is saying, getting deeper into a topic than that, always asking for more or to expand upon a certain point. Um, I believe you're right, Van. It's, both ways work.
I think my point on this is that a lot of people are afraid of using the AI tools because they feel like if they can't write a super prompt to get the exact information that they want the first time around, that somebody's going to think that they're incompetent. But I mean, I continually refine. Sometimes I will spend a lot of time putting together a prompt because I know exactly what I want. But
Hmm.
there are lots of other times when I just say, can you tell me about barefoot shoes? Yeah, I don't know anything about barefoot shoes, but talk to me. And from there, a lot of the tools will also bring you along. I find, and sometimes it gets really annoying, where I'll be in Copilot and I'll ask it a simple question and it'll say, "Okay, here's the answer to your question. Now, would you like for me to answer this other question that's somehow related to the question that you asked me?" And I just like, shut up, just answer my question. But you know, um, it's a lot of fun. I have to say, I really enjoy working with these tools, and I work with Gemini, I work with Perplexity, I work with Claude, and I work with ChatGPT.
Claude
And
is my buddy.
yeah, Claude has been my go-to for several months. Um, there are some things that Claude does very well. There are some things that it doesn't quite do so well. But each one of the tools has its kind of strengths and weaknesses, and you kind of need to work with them and say which one works for what you need at the time that you need it.
I think one thing I heard was that these tools are evolving so fast that if you probably need to assume that it's a different tool every 3 months, or that where one tool might really be outperforming today, in 3 months from now it might be a different tool that's really outperforming, just because the tools are evolving really rapidly.
Yeah, I would agree. They're going to leapfrog each other in capabilities as they make
Exactly.
things better and better. It's just going to leapfrog back and forth.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
I
pretty
think
early.
yeah, go ahead, Aaron. I was going to say we're almost out of time.
Yeah, I don't, yeah, we are. So I guess we'll have to hold that thought for some time later. I'll give it to you. You could think about it as we leave and everything. But pretty early in that conversation, Amal, their guest, talked about a strategy of using ChatGPT where he does the upfront analysis and that gives the remedial tasks and that to ChatGPT and then does the analysis afterwards. And so he's still really doing the critical thinking and that just handing off the remedial tasks to ChatGPT. Good strategy.
I think so.
Yeah.
It can help you. Yeah, definitely. And it also really good at helping you think of things you might not have thought of. Uh,
I
you know,
will say one other thing in that you could tell that video is a little bit dated because she said ChatGPT 4 is coming out or just had come out.
yeah.
That came out a year ago or so. And ChatGPT 5 is out now. So, like who was saying, Steve, I think was saying, they're coming out often, changing very quickly in that. But one thing they said in there that ChatGPT cannot interview your stakeholders, they can't talk to somebody for you. That's not true anymore. I was in a webinar, I think 6 months ago or something, where they were saying they were preparing ChatGPT to interview a stakeholder for them. So you can absolutely use it for that purpose. Me, myself, I would never use it for that purpose. Me as a business analyst, I consider myself in the people business. And, I'm not going to put technology between me and another person because a lot of my job is my ability to build relationships with the people that I work with other stakeholders and that. So I'm not going to put technology as, a thing that's between us. Now, if you think that's good, a lot of them have voice capabilities now that can interview your stakeholders. Do you want to use it for that purpose? I guess that's available. But for me, myself, that's not a use I would use it for.
Not so much for the BA world, but for the world in general. I'm just seeing now that there are apparently some major companies that are using AI to do their preliminary job interviews so that they can interview thousands of candidates because they put an LLM on a video chat with a candidate, and they just have infinite resources. Now, there's a lot of pushback from a lot of people that say that that is totally inappropriate, but it's something that's starting to happen.
And they certainly have used it for years to search or resumes and review resumes and look for keywords and decide which ones will go to the hiring managers and which ones end up in file 13. So good reason to have ECBA or some other credential after your name.
That's right. The AI will be looking for it.
Actually, I think there was somebody that was suggesting that they were going to tune up an AI agent to do their job interviews with the AI agents from the companies.
I do that.
All right. Anything else you want to sign off, Van?
I think, yep. If nobody's got anything else, I thank you all for joining us today. Come back next week and we'll have another AI topic to talk about. And excited to see everybody then.
Yeah, we got a week before the holiday, right?
Yes.
All right. So thank you all very much. This will be published out on our YouTube and put on that page in our webinar here within a couple of days. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you having us here with us today. Hope you enjoyed it and got a little bit of tidbit of information to take back to your work.
Guys, bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a great day.